Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 59 with Melis Limes, aka the girl with beer. So long overdue craft beer episode. Really excited that I got the chance to speak with Melis a couple of weeks ago. Appreciate her making the time for her first ever podcast recording. So it's happened a few times in the past. Always kind of cool to give that experience to somebody, but really it was great hearing about Melis's story, getting into this world and being able to kind of distinguish herself through digital media and kind of just putting herself out there and showcasing her passions and interests and just geeking out about beer. So really a great conversation, and check out her YouTube channel and her Instagram. She's posting a lot of great content there, and see everything else that we mentioned in the show notes. So without further ado, this is episode number 59 with Melis Limes, aka the girl with beer. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and kick off here with our kind of usual introduction. So if you want to introduce yourself briefly and kind of give your professional journey of how you got to be where you are today, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I'll just, fair warning, I talk a lot, and I'm probably going to tell you my entire life story.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
So I guess starting with what I do now would probably be a good place to start this conversation. I'm the communications manager for a brewery out here in San Diego. So I've been living in San Diego for the past 3.5 years. I grew up mostly in Canada. My husband and I moved down to Houston after graduation. I did my bachelor's in communication and political science. I wanted to pursue law school, but when I went to an open house, I think my second year of undergrad, I was like, perhaps this isn't what I want to do. So I just, I was, like typical undergrad, didn't know what I really wanted to do until my last year. I took a public relations class and I fell in love with that topic. So after graduation, my boyfriend then, and now my husband, he got a job offer in Houston. So we moved down there, and I was looking for work, and, without any experience, it was really hard for me to find something. So I decided to go back to school and did a associate's degree in digital communication, specializing in multimedia design. And I thought that would give me more of a competitive edge because of all the job listings I was looking at. A lot of the preferred qualifications they wanted you to have were, being familiar with Adobe products like Illustrator, Photoshop, and also being familiar with WordPress and understanding HTML, things like that. So I was like, all right, if this is a preferred qualification right now, in a few years, this is probably going to be a requirement. So I better get on it. And at the same time, it would give me a different edge, give me a skill set that others in this very competitive industry wouldn't have. So went to school, graduated, started interning for a PR firm. And while I was in school for the second time, I started working as a PR assistant / graphic designer at the college I was attending. And then about 3.5 years ago, we moved to San Diego. And that's really when my love for craft beer started to become more than just let me just have a beer. It's cool. I wanted to learn more about it, and I got really interested in the beer industry. I really wanted to work in the beer industry doing marketing and PR. And, I had the work experience by then and the education, but not a network in the beer community, and definitely no real experience in the beer industry. So I started this Instagram account, The Girl with Beer, which is how you found me. I started kind of posting about my beer travels, and I wouldn't say posting reviews because I don't review beer. I just kind of talk about my experiences around a certain beer or brewery I've been to. And that kind of helps me supplement my resume. So as I started applying for more jobs in social media marketing and marketing in general, it was a way for me to show potential employers hey, look, I really love craft beer. I have a passion for this. I also have the education, the work experience to do marketing. And that's how I landed my current job. Because, sending a photo of my cellar wouldn't have been appropriate. Attached is a photo of my dining room / cellar just to show you how much beer I drink. So it was just it was a good way Now, part of what I do is create and curate content for our social media platforms and manage those communities, obviously. So being able to show that I've done that for myself in the beer industry, or like in a beer centric platform, was a good way to say, like, I can do this. Like, hire me. I'm the best for this job. Like, I'm obsessed with beer, obsessed with social media, obsessed with other parts of like communication. So that's how I landed my job. And I've been there for about a year now. Before that, it was just working for a different agency, doing like different, working with different clients. So like my background goes from like oil and gas to hospitality, food and beverage industry, and now like the craft beer industry. So yeah, I think that's my professional experience in a nutshell.
Yeah, very cool. Well, and I get there's so many good components of that I'm excited to kind of dig into a little bit more here, because, you know, the sort of moniker I have, like, you're, you know, sort of like the girl with beer, whatever, like the higher ed geek thing for me, it's like sort of multifaceted, or sort of however like it kind of makes sense in the moment of like, I work in higher ed and I kind of geek out about that, but I also geek out about a lot of other things, and just sort of like bringing like a geeky personality of being like really enthusiastic and into the things that I enjoy, and wanting to kind of, you know, engage in them that way and kind of share my appreciation. But like, you know, yeah, just like some of the things where like you were able to just like curate content and create content yourself, like to distinguish yourself, which I think has also been my experience of just like writing and podcasting, to just like put myself out there and, you know, create a network, or, you know, meet people and find like job opportunities. But then, you know, higher ed coming into your story as well, of just, you know, that's obviously where you built the skills and knowledge to do the work that you're doing now. And you've done it in a couple of different settings, but, you know, just all these different things kind of coming together, and also like, you know, your hobbies having a positive influence on your life and helping you to kind of, find like an opportunity in terms of like working and getting gainful employment that's enjoyable and those sort of things. So it's all this stuff that I love like talking with people about. So I appreciate that, like, you're hitting on all the right things. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so great. But
yeah, definitely. Like having the educational background helps. Like I think social media marketing is still fairly new, I guess. Like, it's been around for a while, but in the beer industry too, it's fairly new. So a lot of people think like, oh, I'm just going to hire an intern or hire someone straight out of college that like can post for me. But there's so much PR that goes in the background, like messaging, how to come up with like a brand voice, how to stick to that brand voice, and having that be like your North Star whenever you're posting content, like, is something that doesn't come naturally to everyone, or like doesn't come with like just doing social media marketing. I think you do have to have that background to be successful, and not everyone could do this job. I mean, it seems like everyone can do this job because it's like, oh, I'm just going to take a photo and like post it on the internet and perfect. Like, there's so much strategy and thinking and planning and communication that goes behind the scenes for one Instagram post. And I'm not just like talking about the girl with beer. I'm talking about like clients I've worked with in the past and my current job. Mm-hmm. So like everything just kind of tied together. The job that I'm doing now, it's wonderful because I love what I'm doing. I get to do it for a fun industry, for a company that like I really enjoy being a part of, with a really awesome team. But I wouldn't have had this opportunity if it wasn't for my hobby, kind of marrying together my skill set and my passion, and being able to show that in one portfolio. Like, my Instagram account is kind of my portfolio when it comes to that.
Right. Well, I guess, yeah, I mean, you credited certainly, yeah, like I appreciate that, of like the value and the importance now, especially as they've been around like long enough, of like you're saying, like a formal education, bringing yourself into like, you know, digital marketing and those sort of things. Because it's like, certainly there probably are still people who think it's like an afterthought, or that it's like, you know, yeah, it can kind of be done in a sort of, I don't know, like just not the right way. Like you're engaging with it in terms of like taking it seriously, doing it high quality, mm-hmm. doing it consistently, and in like an engaging way. So like your formal education, you know, like learning that, like the functional pieces, and also kind of like the theory behind communicating and those sort of things. So mm-hmm. I don't know if there's anything, I guess, that way of kind of like the classroom experience that you want to talk more about, us in terms of like what you feel like your college experience gave to you, or if there's other like just sort of less tangible things where it's like, oh, just as you kind of like grew or developed as a person, because I think it's always nice hearing, because I talk to a lot of people who work in higher ed who usually always have those stories where it's like, oh, I had a mentor and they like, helped me to engage with this work to help support future students or something. But it's also like, we work with students who gain, meaningful skills and then go off into the world to do other things that aren't higher ed related. Like there's a lot of like stories in the higher ed ecosystem of people obviously just kind of like, engaging with this work and continuing to do it professionally. But I guess, yeah, like anything that comes to mind in terms of like how your college experience continues to kind of shape you in a positive way.
Yeah, like when I started college, I was just a confused young 17-year-old who didn't know what she wanted to do when she grew up. And sometimes I still feel like that, and I went into school like thinking I'm going to go into law because the people I admired in my family that I really looked up to were either lawyers or judges. So I was like, oh, like that should be my path because that's what the people I like are doing. I didn't really understand why I wanted that to be a career goal for myself. But going into college, my parents moved to Kentucky from Canada when I was in high school. And then afterwards, when I graduated, I moved back to Canada to pursue my college degree there. So like being away from my family, away from them, like in a different country just kind of set me up to be more independent and just take care of myself more. And, like that could have been done otherwise, but I had a purpose to be away from them, and that was to go to college. And with going to school, I developed critical thinking skills that I didn't have before. And I don't know a lot of people who have, went to school for something and pursued a career in that particular degree. But for me, it turned out to be that way. I studied communications, and now my job title is communications manager. So it's like my path took me to different places, and I acquired different skills, and I learned a lot along the way. But my schooling gave me the theoretical background to really understand how communication works and how to bring that into different industries and different voices and different avenues and platforms. Because, when I was in school, social media just had started, like Facebook just started. You still had to have a college email address to even sign up to Facebook at the time. And the way it's evolved, that takes more practical, you have to be in it to learn it, I guess. But with school, it's it helps you kind of figure out who you are, what you want to do. It helps you develop critical thinking skills. It helps you develop research skills. So at least in my degree, I'm not really sure if I'm answering what you're asking for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just going off on a tangent. But to me, it was really important to go to school. And even after I graduated, I wasn't fully prepared to be a functioning adult. So I went back to school again and got a different degree, still in communication. But I needed to kind of update my skill set because the world is changing and media is changing. So I needed to be more aware of what was happening in the digital media platform. So it's just, even out of school, I'm continuously learning, continuously reading, trying to become a better marketer, become a better person. So even after school, you still continue learning. And I think that's important.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. 'Cause I think sometimes one way or another, you're figuring out kind of Goldilocksing your way to a career or whatever, or even you kind of are able to build yourself to be adaptable and flexible or whatever. Because somebody could get a degree, like you're saying, in law, and then be like, well, you know what, I don't really like that, but now I know that for sure, and I'm going a different path or something. But thankfully, you figured out what you're good at or what you enjoy, and that is also what you got your degree in. And then certainly now it's so much more important, like you're saying, just lifelong learning, being open to that and being willing to commit to that. And whether it takes the shape of a 2-year degree or just some certificate, or you're kind of taking courses or, going to a conference or something. But there's always new things to learn, or just kind of take inspiration from, or to kind of affirm the things that you're doing and all that. Because you easily could have not gotten a formalized credential to kind of certify your abilities in digital media, but like there is a lot of value in that. And I think it also just kind of distinguishes you, kind of in the marketplace, like you were saying, like, it's like, okay, like I know my stuff here. It's not just like, trust me, like I know how to do all this, I swear, or whatever. Like, because even with the portfolio, it's like you kind of have like the whole pantheon of things that can really help like distinguish people as they're, especially like getting their career started. It's like I've learned it. And also it's like kind of like show and tell, like you're able to say like, this is the kind of the product of what my learning gave me, like you can just kind of show the whole portfolio and those sort of things. So, that's really great.
Like, as you're saying, sometimes you may not have to have a degree to be successful or like figure things out or get the experience. But in this day and age, it's kind of hard to find even an entry-level job without that piece of paper that says you went to school. So it at least opens the door, Mm-hmm. And I couldn't just show like a portfolio or like the work I've done because I wouldn't have been able to build that portfolio without my undergrad. I know a lot of people have succeeded without one, but for me, it's definitely opened doors that wouldn't have been open without it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also too, like you're saying, like, it kind of segues to my next question about like your current work and exploring that a little bit more, like the idea that your kind of discipline is something that is also very adaptable versus like, sometimes if it's like, okay, I got a degree in like electrical engineering, it's like, well, like that's what you're doing. Like you're doing that thing, but it's like, well, you could be a communicator for an electrical engineering firm or a craft beer play or what, like, it's sort of like the more liberal arts and kind of building you up as more of like a whole person, just, whether it's like in or outside the classroom, there's a lot of stuff that kind of digs into that in terms of like the higher ed world of just like sort of building whole people that are very, again, just like, lifelong learners and like just come at the world with a very holistic perspective. So like that idea that you just understand how people communicate, which is just a fundamental piece of being human, is communicating ideas and connecting and building community and all that kind of stuff. So I guess if you want to dig into that, of maybe even like, I'm obviously super excited to like have an episode that kind of like is anchored by craft beer because we've not really done that yet. But like, even if it's just generally like that idea of like your current work of like doing this stuff, like if there's like an anecdote in terms of just like being able to connect with people, share a story, spread a message, or like whatever, I guess like what has been like motivating and inspiring for you in terms of like your current work that like keeps you at it. Maybe it's more craft beer focused, like in terms of just like literally where you are now, or just like in communication in general, like what has been like resonating with you to kind of keep you motivated to be doing it now.
I think the best part is knowing that the beverage, this like delicious liquid, brings people together. It's, the reason why we're talking. You found me through me posting about craft beer. Yeah. And yesterday I was out at lunch with two girls I met through Instagram through like craft beer. We're drinking, and the guy next to us orders a beer that my company, it's our beer. And I was just like, I turn around to him, I'm like, good choice, like, love it. I just love when people are enjoying the product that I'm a part of. And it's like with beer, it's been around for years, and it's the like breweries or pubs. Those are places people go and hang out and be together and exchange ideas and have conversations. And I love that, like, in my life, professionally and personally, beer has brought me to engage with different people from different walks of life that I wouldn't have had an opportunity to do so otherwise. And it sounds crazy. It's like, it's just beer. But, like I play on a softball team with a bunch of people who got together because we like beer, like craft beer. We're geek out about it. So I have my job because I geek out about craft beer. I have my friends because I geek out about craft beer. And if I didn't make my friends through the craft beer community, I made them through like the CrossFit community, another thing I geek out about. And those people also really enjoy beer. So it's like everything overlaps. And for me, being able to bring our product to market as a marketer, like being able to see people enjoy this and have those same experiences like I just described, it's a big motivator. It's like I don't typically work at festivals. I'm more like behind the scenes, but one festival where I was pouring beer for our tent, like the way people just were so happy to drink and be there and like keep coming back to our booth and saying like, oh, this is so tasty. Like, I love this. Like, I want more of this. It makes you happy, like seeing people enjoy your product and having a good time being in that environment. So like, if it wasn't for the beer industry, I don't know what I don't know what I would be doing, but I don't think it would be as fun. I've experienced this in like different industries, and it's never been this much fun. And I never had a chance to see like how much joy our product brought to other people in my other jobs. Whereas here it's like, oh, it's just amazing liquid. Like, yay, everyone enjoys it. And if people don't enjoy it, then we'll find them a beer that they do enjoy. There's a style for everyone, honestly. Like when people say I don't like beer, I'm like, well, what have you had? Like, can I give you this one to try? Like, what do you typically drink? Maybe there is a flavor profile that we can play around with that you might enjoy. And for most of my friends who say like, oh, I don't like beer, it's because they've been used to drinking like the same mass-produced beer that may not be the style that they like. Like, I don't really love lagers, so like I never was really quote unquote a beer drinker because that's all I was exposed to until I started tasting different styles of beer, and I was like, oh my god, there's so much more that exists, and this is what I want. And that helped me like figure out what kind of style of beer I like, and became a beer lover, like a beer geek at this point. Like I'm just like obsessed with it. So yeah.
No, yeah. Well, because I guess it is like, because I know like you're saying like you're not even like getting like super deep into like necessarily like reviewing it, and because that gets into kind of like food critic territory, and like I think sometimes that can be like intimidating or inaccessible. It's like if you can never just say sort of like, oh, I see what they're going for here. Like you're kind of just like describing like this is what this is like. So like versus being like, oh, that's, you know, like I'm being a critic and saying whether it's good or bad. It's like it's highly subjective, and you know, I think sometimes it's the language or the way that people kind of get super deep into describing it can kind of, I don't know, be inaccessible. But yeah, but like the idea too, like you're saying, of like the idea of it, like a lot of tap rooms and stuff being like community spaces, or just it's a, you know, a place and a thing that brings people together and brings people joy. And like, it's awesome that, yeah, like you've been able to witness that firsthand versus like, yeah, like other people doing a lot of different kinds of work just can't, you know, they won't be able to see how people kind of consume or enjoy the thing that they're creating.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
And speaking of like not reviewing, and that's precisely the reason why I don't like writing if something's good or bad. And sometimes I get critiqued on that, and I get where people are coming from, but I don't have the qualifications to review or critique beer. I'm not a cicerone. I am a marketer who just enjoys beer, and I enjoy the experiences I have around trying new beer. I like the taste of it, but I'm not going to break it down to like dissect everything about it, because that's not what I do. And also, like, I know how much love and passion and like sweat and tears go into making these beers, that if I don't like something, saying like this is shit, don't drink it, like that's not fair to the person making it. Also, you did touch on the fact that taste is subjective. I've had a beer where I thought, oh my God, this is so sweet. And I'm the type of person who eats like cake for breakfast. And I was like, this beer is so sweet, I can't even drink another sip. And then I have another friend who thinks the same beer is amazing and is so good, you know, and it's the same beer with two different palates. So for me to review that and be like, I didn't like this beer is shit, wouldn't be fair, because someone else is going to have a different experience about it. For me, it's like, here's what I'm drinking, here's where I'm at. And whenever I travel, it's easier to experience that city through the breweries because that's what I'm familiar with. And like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a beer at this place, go check out this other place, and then do all the other touristy things and enjoy my time. Because I think that like the local food and local beer scene is a great way to experience a new city, and that's kind of like how I like to experience new cities. I eat and drink and go walk around to burn off the calories I just consumed.
Yeah, for sure. Because you've done, and we'll link out to your YouTube channel that has like your the videos from places that you've visited and things that you've like the places you've gone to have like different beers and stuff. So yeah, because I think that's honestly like what I do as well. Because I think it kind of touches on something you just said too. Of like, on one hand, it's like I've kind of created this vernacular in my head of just like people who make beer, like, like they're like the brewers, because they're literally like, like painstakingly creating these things. It's like they're like making their art, and it just happens to be like in a beer. And the idea that like they're really getting into all of the like the science and the flavors and like how you're combining things and all that. Like it's like really a lot of times there's like these very unique expressions, and like the idea is just like, as with art, it could just be like, oh, I could see what they were going for there, even if it's like not like your favorite thing. It's just like, oh, that's really interesting. I never thought to do that before. Or like, you're just kind of appreciating kind of their art, so to speak, like in the form of this beer, and not making those kind of like, kind of qualitative assumptions about whether it's like, oh, this is bad or whatever. But and I think too, like with the traveling piece, like you can go, and I think it can be like it being like a community space. It's like a really good gateway to just like that local community. And also it's like, I usually will go and be like, what would you recommend to do? Cause like I'll usually already have a short list of places that I'm like already planning on going to, but it's interesting to see like sort of unsolicited, they'll be like, oh, you should go here and you should do that. And I'm like, cool, I already have those on my list. Like if a local person, like you're here, like you're really like kind of ingrained into the local community and you're recommending it. I'm like, great. I, sort of made a good choice or whatever. But then often it's like, oh, I didn't even know about that place, but I would assume you would know better. So like, I'll probably, try to swing by. So, so I think, it's always like a nice kind of anchor for anywhere, that I visited, is to at least pop into a place or two, different tap rooms. But, and I guess, I feel like we've kind of gotten to a lot of the stuff. I mean, I guess if there's anything else in terms of like, always like to ask people like what they're reading, watching, and or listening to, like just like podcasts or books or anything that, if it's just for pure entertainment value, or like stuff that maybe is informing your marketing work or stuff about like craft beer. I guess like, is there any stuff that you might want to kind of just give a tip of the hat to that we could include in the show notes?
I'm listening to an audiobook. I really like listening to audiobooks just because like I like to listen to it on my morning walks when I'm walking my dog, or like if I'm trying to go for a run. I get really bored of running, so having something in my ear kind of motivates me to go the distance. So what I'm currently listening to is Let My People Go Surfing by Yvonne. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Chouinard, I think, the founder of Patagonia. That's what I'm listening to currently. I'm almost done with that. Reading The Confidence Code by Patty Kay and Claire Shipman. It's just like building confidence for women, and I feel like that's something that I should really work on, and it's just an interesting read. I just started it, so I can't really speak much about it. And watching, I'm watching Law and Order SVU. It's one of my favorite shows. So I'm caught up with like the current seasons. So I've started back from like episode 1, and I'm up to like season 8 now.
Wow.
So I like watching it like kind of to unwind at the end of the day, but I can't fall asleep when that's like the last thing I watched, because I'll like have nightmares. So I like try to go on YouTube and watch like a funny video or something before falling asleep, just to get my mind off of what I just watched. But I really enjoy like criminal shows. Like, yeah, I've always really liked Law and Order, even as a teenager.
Yeah, it just blows my mind. That's like, it's like season 21 coming up or something. Like, it's just like, it just broke the other Law and Order's record of like the longest running like network show. So it's just like, yeah, I mean, and I know it's like a lot of people like it, and it's like just syndicated all over the place. Like it just like is always on.
I love like the different topics that, like even in the older episodes, just things that were current, in the political sphere, but like it's part of everyone's lives, and like just seeing some of these issues being brought up on this like fictionalized show is really interesting. And it, like it exposed me to things that I personally never experienced, but just trying to understand other people's point of views. Like even with a TV show, it's been really interesting. So, and I think Olivia Benson is a badass, and I love watching her.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, quite a good idea to have like a palate cleanser after
Yeah.
watching, especially if you're like I just watched 4 episodes of the show and I need to go to bed. So that's like, yeah, clean slate, and then
Yeah, that's
go
what
to
I was
sleep.
doing, and then wondering why I wasn't sleeping well. And I was like starting to sleep with like the light on. I'm like, okay, no, we're gonna watch something funny and then go to bed.
Oh man, yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I've never gotten into audiobooks, but I feel like I need to because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and like
Yeah.
I will do that like passively a lot, but like sitting down and reading a book, it's like a chore. Like I cannot like more often than not like, sit through and like I'll either like fall asleep or I'm just like getting distracted or something. But I'll listen to a lot of podcasts, so maybe I need to.
Yeah, I just recently started listening to audiobooks maybe like 3 months ago, and it's easy to do when you have passive time, like when I'm getting ready for work, when I'm walking my dog, when I'm running. I also listen to podcasts, but there isn't a lot that like there isn't one that comes to the top of my head because I'm still trying to like find ones that I like. But I think podcasts and books are just like audiobooks are a great way when you're driving. Like it makes you feel like your time is used more efficiently when you have something in your ear. And with reading, to me, reading is a lot of like, it's a pleasurable thing. It's not a chore. It's just, I don't make time for it because every day is just like hectic. And I feel like to read, you have to really focus on what you're reading or you miss, half the sentence and you're like, oh, what was I doing right now?
Yeah.
It's easy to get distracted. And sometimes like I have so many thoughts in my head. I'm like, okay, I need to focus on what I'm reading. But then like my dog barks and I'm like, okay, well, this is over.
Yeah.
Like for a long time, I didn't read for pleasure, like after college, because I was like, I hate books. It's not true. I don't hate books. I was just, forced to read a lot in school. And then I think the first fiction book I picked up after, I was just like, oh my God, I missed reading for pleasure and I missed reading fiction books. And I miss like where my mind can take me, like my imagination and bringing these words to life in my head. I miss that. And I feel like I should make more time for it, but sometimes I guess watching Law and Order is easier than reading about it, right?
Right. Because I think my like diet of like good stories is mostly like like movies and television, and I'll like be playing a video game and it's just like a single player experience, and I'm like going through a story or something. So like it's just very low on the pecking order as just like, okay, well I have that book that I've been meaning to read, So yeah, we usually reserve it for like, okay, I'm like on the train or I'm on the plane or waiting for the plane, like any times where it's like I really can't do anything else, so I guess I'll read. It just ends up being that way.
Yeah, on planes, I see people working, and I'm like, I can't work on planes just because like you're already so crammed, and like I don't want like people looking at my screen, and I don't want to hit them with my elbow when I'm trying to type. So like reading is easier, or like I'll download an episode or two on Netflix and like watch that on the plane. But I can't remember who it was, but like I remember someone saying that it was they only read when they're flying. Like they made a rule for themselves, like not to work, not to watch anything, but like use that time to just read. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I should do it, but I haven't. I read half the time.
Yeah. Or even just like reading a chapter before bed, and it's like eventually we'll get the book done. Like, because it's like, okay, it makes you sleepy. Just like put yourself to sleep with the book or something. But, I guess then we'll, with all of that, we will now end the episode as we always do, as the kind of eternal optimist that I am. Always just like ending the episodes with something or things that you are looking forward to in your life, job, and or the world. So kind of any of those things or all of the things. Just anything that you're looking forward to.
I'm going to Portland in a couple of weeks to meet up with some friends from college and probably check out the breweries there. It's been a while since I've been to Portland. Oh, I'm flying out to Denver tomorrow to go to Craft Brewers Conference, which is going to be my first time ever. It's a huge conference for people in the craft beer industry. So that's kind of like work and personal. I'm looking forward to drinking all the Denver beers and learning more about my work and getting to meet some of the people in my industry that I haven't had a chance to meet yet. And I think that's kind of like what I'm looking forward to in my job in life.
Very good. I went to Denver last year for the first time, and it's just like a great scene out there. I look forward to going back whenever I can. And I think I just heard a craft beer podcast talking about that, like the CPC.
Yeah. I remember like when I first started my job here, it was happening. So I've been at my current role for about a year, so it makes sense. And I remember being like, next year I'm going, and next year came so fast. I can't believe it.
Yeah. Well, I will look forward to, I'm sure you will share much about your adventures and stuff. So I look forward to seeing all the things you get up to and everything. And just really appreciate, you making the time for the show and sharing all that you did. And like I said, we'll have ways to connect with you in the show notes and links to all the stuff that we talked about. So thanks so much again. And enjoy the travels and all the beer, and enjoy the conference.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast, so excuse my stumbling and my nervousness, but it's been awesome talking to you. Thanks for reaching out and having me on the show. This is awesome.
This podcast is part of the ConnectEDU Podcast Network, bringing together diverse voices in the higher ed community. Check us out on Twitter at ConnectEDUPod or at connectedu.network. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast.